Let's talk about a comparative study on the Kubernetes and Docker. So let's compare Kubernetes and Docker. First of all, when we talk about Kubernetes and Docker, they are two essential tools in modern containerization application development and deployment. But they serve different purposes. Okay, they are actually two different techniques, technologies for the same purpose, you can say. So let's see the comparative study. Let's talk about the comparative study one by one. I will be comparing the features like purpose, main component, scaling, networking, load balancing, storage, self-healing, and complexity. So when I will be talking about all these features, a lot amount of confusion would be clear that what is Kubernetes and Docker itself. So let's talk about the purpose. Like when we talk about Docker, it is used for creating, maintaining, and running containers. When we talk about Kubernetes, the purpose is it is used for orchestrating and maintaining containerized application. So simply, Docker is used for creating, managing, and running containers, and Kubernetes is for the containerized application to manage the containerized application across multiple nodes. When we talk about the main component of Docker, Docker engine is there that runs and manages containers. Whereas when we talk about Kubernetes, Kubernetes clusters are there. In the Kubernetes clusters are there that manages deployment, scaling, and networking of containers. Okay, so basically you can say Kubernetes is having a larger area, covering the larger area. In imagination, you can just think about that containers are actually inside the Kubernetes. Okay. So scaling, when we talk about, so Docker, in the Docker manual, scaling is there, requires additional tools like Docker Swarm for orchestration. And when we talk about Kubernetes, automatic scaling, self-healing, and local load balancing is there. In the Kubernetes, automatic scaling is there. When we talk about the networking abilities, networking features in the Docker, so simple networking but limited to single host by default. In the Docker, it is limited to the single host, whereas in the Kubernetes, advanced networking with service discovery, load balancing, and cross-cluster communication. So simply, Kubernetes is having the networking feature in such a manner that cross-cluster communication is also possible. Networking of the containers is possible in the case of the Kubernetes, whereas in the case of the Docker, it is having single host by default. Then the load balancing, if we talk about in the Docker, basic load balancing using containers, linking, and exposed ports. Whereas in the Kubernetes, it like built-in load balancing across multiple nodes and containers. So simply in the Kubernetes, you are able to network more than one node of containers. Like nodes and containers are there, and they are linked together in a network, in a huge network, which is getting managed by the Kubernetes technology, you can say. Whereas Docker is having single container. Containerization is there, but it is not having networking. Like huge networking is not there. Then when we talk about the storage feature in the Docker, it supports data volumes but lack persistent storage management. Whereas in the Kubernetes, it manages persistent storage dynamically. Here, the dynamic storage management is present in the Kubernetes. Whereas in the Docker, it supports data volume but lack of persistent storage management is there. Persistency is lacking in the case of Docker. Then when we talk about the self-healing, so containers restart on failure. Containers restart on failure, but do not automatically recover across multiple hosts. They can't recover across multiple hosts automatically in the Docker. Whereas in the Kubernetes, it detect and replace failed containers automatically. So Kubernetes, you can say, advanced technology as compared to the Dockers. It is having good features, automatic memory management, automatic healing procedures are there. When we talk about the complexities in the Docker, easier to set up and use for local development, whereas in the Kubernetes, it can handle more complex, and it is actually it can handle more complex application, but it is more complex to configure also. But powerful for large scale applications. You will be able to easily manage the large scale applications with the help of the Kubernetes. Whereas in the Docker, local development is possible. That is the best way to use the Docker applications. I hope this much is clear. So simply the Docker is primarily for containerization, building and running containers. Kubernetes is for orchestration, managing large scale container deployments. And they are used together, where Docker runs the containers and Kubernetes manages them across multiple hosts. So I hope the concept or the comparative study between the Docker and Kubernetes must be clear now. If you have any query, you can definitely ask.